Lowe's knows how to get you ready for holiday hosting with up to 35% off select home decor. And get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, members get free delivery, haul-away, basic installation, parts, and a 2-year Lowe's protection plan when you spend $2,500 or more on select LG major appliances. Valid through 10/1. Member offer excludes Massachusetts, Maryland, Wisconsin, New Jersey, and Florida. Installed by independent contractors. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for more details.
The kid you hear playing the piano, he's not mine. On top of the 2 weekly piano lessons, I give my son Smarty Pants vitamins to support his brain health. And while I'm supposed to say it's not a competition, of course it is. Choose Smarty Pants vitamins to support your kid's brain health. Shop on Amazon, smartypantsvitamins.com, or at Target today. Brain health support from Key Nutrients. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hi, and welcome to The Last Show. Oh, we got a great lineup for you tonight. Here's some of the stuff we'll cover and what you'll learn on tonight's program. A kid throws a tantrum. A parent just takes it. Maybe says, what would you like me to cook you for dinner, honey, in response? Sometimes in parenting, being too nice can go bad. Boundaries are important, and that is what we'll cover on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, broadcasting's only mental health segment intended for a Thursday night that airs on a Wednesday night. And because it's Wednesday, we're going to air that halfway through the hour. After that, in a new study, kids find courage in a most unlikely place: robots. That's right, researchers are using machines to help children face reading anxiety head on. Tech can step in when a kid struggles with reading, correct what's going on, and help that kid in later life. But what does it mean for us when machines help young minds find courage? That is what we'll discuss later in the program. Those are just some of the topics we'll hit on tonight's show. There will be more. You will learn more, but for now, we better jump in. And in serious driving while under the influence charges involving extremely dangerous vehicles news, we go to Prince George, British Columbia, where a man was caught by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, by the RCMP, for driving, under the influence. We are joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five, reporting live from the scene in Croatia, which is not the scene, but that's not important. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hello, my dear boy. Now, one of my life goals is to be arrested by the RCMPs, the Mounties. I used to love a show called Due South, and I'd always dreamt of just walking around one Toronto street, Toronto, or one Montreal street, Montreal, and the mounted police just running up to me in their little red outfits with a little pony and just arresting me in the most polite manner I can ever imagine. Excuse me, sir, you've just killed a man. Do you mind coming over here and having a chat with us? It'll be lovely. But this unfortunate fellow, my friend, in a place called Prince George, is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. At the break, you were like, Prince George, that must be a new city. It's named after the new prince. I'm like, Tony, you're British. You should know there have been many Prince Georges.
There was other Prince Georges before. I thought they just named it after the new one that came around about 12 years ago.
No, it's like a 200-year-old city like any other place in North America, which I know is young to you, but for you, that's like very old.
David, I've got to bring this serious now. Obviously, I've worked with various people, various law enforcement now. Drink driving, very serious crime, my friend. I would never advocate. I would never endorse it. It has killed many family members. It's done. But this chap, David, I can kind of let him get away with it, yeah?
I can too, because he wasn't driving like a huge SUV. He wasn't even driving a small car. Well, I guess he was driving a small car, but not a real car. I mean, this guy was driving. Tony, I'm going to let you say it because you're so excited about this story.
Okay, so he was driving a Mattel Barbie car. So for those who don't know, it's the cars that you can put, I think, kids up to the age of 3 or 4 in, and it's remote control. They can go. It tops out at an extreme 5 miles an hour. It's got its roof down. It's battery operated, and this guy was under the influence. He did breath test positive both times. So you get an initial test and a secondary confirmation test. He was arrested for driving under the influence, poor guy, in a 5 mile an hour. And I believe it was a pink Barbie mobile.
It was a pink Barbie Jeep. Should this guy have gotten a DUI? Like, I guess it's dangerous. I guess he was on the road. Also, why was he on a public street in this thing? I wouldn't even go on a public street on this thing sober. It seems kind of dangerous, but whatever. Should he? I know he should get some charge.
Do you know what? Do you guys do over there? Do you got like a ticking off or like a caution? Is that a thing over there? Because in England, you can get a caution. It sits on your record, but not like, I mean, it won't affect you getting a job. It won't affect you working with, it's like a caution, basically a hard telling off. Do you have that over there in the States?
I don't know if in North America, like Canada and the U.S., we have the British equivalent of a caution. We have things where you can get charged with a crime and you don't see jail time, or you can like make some deal where you don't actually get charged being guilty with it, but instead you do some community service. We must have something somewhat equivalent, but no, we don't call it a caution, which is like a formal police warning, but not a charge.
Yeah, it's a formal, obviously there's an arrest and then there's prosecution and then sentencing and you can get a caution hit. But I've seen in movies, and again, I don't know whether it's true, if you're driving and you're kind of going over this, you're infringing the speed limit, the guy lets you off with a warning. So I've seen like in road movies, the police guy comes and the woman sort of, upends her breasts a little bit and flirts with the police officer. I know you've done it many a time, David, to get off a speeding ticket. Now, that's kind of being let off with a warning. It's not recorded anywhere is what I'm saying.
I don't know that we quite have that. Probably there's some equivalent. It probably varies state to state in the U.S., province to province in Canada, whatever. Let's get back to this story because the guy actually talked to the media and he told the media he wanted a Slurpee. Do you know what a Slurpee is? Do you have those in the UK?
I am absolutely addicted to Slurpees. You get them from 7-Eleven. They're this wildly calorific, wildly sugary, slush puppy drink, like a crushed ice, slush ice. I'm addicted to them. And obviously, because I'm a diabetic now, every time I take one of my toes falls off. But apart from that, I think they're amazing.
They're windshield washer fluid flavored. They probably just use the windshield washer fluid to flavor them. But yeah. So he tells the media he wanted a Slurpee. So he took his roommate's daughter's Barbie Jeep Hot Wheels thing to get the sweet treat.
David, stop there. So are you talking about grand theft larceny as well? So he stole the vehicle?
I believe it could have been borrow. I don't know that the authorities charged him with theft, but maybe they will after hearing this interview. He did say it was the first time taking a ride. But what I love is this guy, when being interviewed by the media for this ridiculous story, he gave some advice, which is don't drink and drive. Which I think kind of admits responsibility. I love that he told and advised people after being charged for driving a Barbie Jeep at 5 miles an hour drunk. He's like, you know what, everybody, my advice to you, don't drink and drive.
He's a responsible criminal. But again, David, my go-to for this is if he gets locked up, he's in the San Fernando Penitentiary. He's there with his hardened criminals, tattoos all over them. And they're asking him what he got sent down for. The fact that he could say that he did a DUI in a Barbie mobile, I just think he's not going to play out well in the yard.
I don't know. I think if I was like a murderer or a bank robber in jail, locked up in like maximum security, and I asked a new prisoner what they were in for, and they said I got a DUI on a Barbie Jeep, I would have profound respect for them because of the pure stupidity of the act. There's something admirable about doing this and getting caught. Also, what bad luck, you know?
Yeah, just of order. I mean, he probably did stick out a mile, right? Just driving around. Big Barbie Jeep, and then the mounted police, maybe they went a little bit too far. I'm not to criticize the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They are wonderful on horses, but yeah.
They did give a statement, and the statement is as follows. This is from the RCMP. While it might seem to some to be an inefficient use of police time to pull over a driver in a toy car, the risk the driver was creating to other motorists on the road who were forced to go around him, coupled with the risk to himself as other drivers are not in the habit of looking for toy cars on busy roads, was enough to warrant police attention. They really thought about that statement, didn't they?
They've got very good PR, my friend. They've really gone through it. They've chat GPT'd it, and they've run it through everybody else, and then they've posted it. I agree.
Well, it's a scary world out there, so be careful when on the road and look out for drunk drivers in Barbie Jeep cars. I want to talk more about this idea of the scary world out there because Tony Five, our foreign correspondent in the UK, has an issue with like reading the news, doom scrolling, seeing horrible things, real horrible things, not like this, and then being a little upset and not wanting to leave his house. So that's what we're going to discuss here with Tony Five after the break. Tony, final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts is I am going to keep my eye out for any possible toy car infringements in the UK. I'll report back to you. Here in Croatia, they don't have any children, so it's wonderful.
All right, we'll be back with Tony just in a minute.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Oh, the man is smiling. Tony Five, foreign correspondent in London, England, is here with me, David Cooper. This is The Last Show. We haven't played your theme music in a while, Tony. Welcome back to the show.
David, I'm so happy to hear the music. I am here in sunny Croatia at the moment, a little bit further away from London, but the music is there. The music is vibing. I might actually play it out of my windows to see if we can get some Croatian listeners.
I would like to see a Croatian boogie, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
and
I can see a Croatian boogie all the time, my friend, just when the doors are closed.
All right, the Croatian boogies. That's slang for boogers. Gross. I want to do something meta because we are technically a part of the media. Just saying
God.
that makes
when
me laugh.
When you say that, it just makes me cringe. You know, like when we sound even semi-professional. When you say stuff like, we've got to do this because we're going to be speaking to someone about a talent. And I'm like, what is he talking about? What is this man talking about? Yes, I've got to go speak to my agent. What for, David? Who are you talking to? But it's true. It happens. It's going.
I was at a dinner the other night and someone turned to me and they were like, as a member of the media, what are your views on this topic? And I was like, no. I mean, yes, but no.
Just no. Yeah, exactly.
No is the answer to your question. You watch a lot of news. I know this show, we don't cover politics too much, but you watch a lot of news and you're coming to New York in November for Thanksgiving to visit me. It's something you do every year.
Yeah.
And you were like, are things okay in the U.S. right now? Like, should I be worried out in the streets? Like, are law enforcement out there? What is happening? And I basically said to you, Tony, you're exhibiting the signs of doom scrolling, which you have in the past.
Completely called me on it. And it's amazing, really. So my morning routine, I have a dog. I get up, I take the dog out. I'm listening to local news channels and it's obviously world news, London news, so on and so forth. And I'm not politically biased at all. And David always sort of catches me. We never really talk about politics. Not that I don't understand it, but it's just not bothering me. I do get into this phase when I've got not a lot to do that I start doom scrolling. And that is the worst for me because that sends me down a massively slippery slope. So I don't know whether any of you guys out there listening or whether David sees it, but so much negativity coming out. Like there's a lot of hatred of people. There's lots of marches against certain things. There's lots of people against people in power. And I'm coming to the States. Every year I see David for Thanksgiving. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's become something that I look forward to. One of my top 5 things that I look forward to every year. Everybody in the on the guest list for David's dinner gets angry because I want to start talking about it in January, and I have to wait till at least midsummer to be. I mean, I think my goalpost is Burning Man. So when he's come back from Burning Man, then I can start discussing, what we're going to have for Thanksgiving dinner. We don't have Thanksgiving here in the UK, so it's a wonderful thing.
Well, I'm Canadian, and Canadian Thanksgiving is in October. I think it's coming up soon. Well, I guess it's September 17th, whatever. But so I don't really have a Thanksgiving either. So this is like a friend's, chosen family tradition for me. And so it's very much the same for you. It's like you didn't grow up celebrating this holiday, so it's turned into this like friends gathering that it's lovely. But you were saying at the break that you're kind of like scared to come here.
It wasn't scared. I think I'm more, I want to be very aware. So I've got sort of a security background and I'm very aware of things. I just wanted to just gauge what the feeling was out there because you lived like directly well in the city, well in New York. You've got like your finger on the pulse. And I just asked you, do you notice anything different? Is it the same as it's always been? Is it different? What's the vibe there? And you kind of said it's the same.
Don't take my word for it because I live here and I might not see things. I had breakfast on Monday with a colleague. It's a person we know, not important, but he's from Toronto, Canada, and he said I was very comforted having seen the news, having that same sentiment you're discussing now, Tony, to just like stay in New York. He was staying in Chelsea, I think. It's a neighborhood here, not important, but he was very comforted to just like walk out of the hotel, be in the streets, be on the subway, feel the energy, and know that it's very much the same way that it was when he visited here, a few years ago. And so his anecdote is what I'll share with you. It's the scary world syndrome, right? We turn on the news, we see horrible things happening, and I'm not discounting the horrible things that we see happening and the way that affects us, but it's a small fraction, but that's what gets the coverage, and controversy sells. So of course that's what you're going to see when you turn on mainstream media.
I mean, to be fair, I have traveled all over the world. I've been to some very horrible places. I've been to some very lovely places.
Haven't you been to the North Korean, South Korean, like DMZ border,
Yes,
Tony?
correct.
Like, haven't you seen the most tense political places in the world?
I have, yeah, of course. But I remember you told me off for getting involved in people doing the 3-card Monty trick in Times Square. Do you remember?
Oh my God.
I stepped in. Listeners, for those who don't know, in Times Square, like most major touristy areas, you get con artists. You get people doing the 3-card Monty routine where they hook in, gullible students or whatever, and they play this game, find the lady or find the ace, and they basically take their money. This trick, and I know the trick because I've done amateur magic, is basically a magic trick, but they have people who are in on it. So they have maybe 3 or 4 spotters who spot police or whatever. And now I could see them ripping these 2 lovely young girls off for hundreds of dollars. So I intervened and all of these people came out of nowhere. And I remember coming into your house or your flat, or we met somewhere and you just told me, why did you get involved? They could have stabbed you. They could have shot you.
I mean, wouldn't you know not to do that in London?
But I would have done it I just felt so bad for these girls that I didn't stop the game, but I just sort of signaled to them saying, look, this is not for you. You are not going to win. You are never, the people that are winning are in on this.
No one ever wins, yeah.
And no one ever wins, right? And obviously they heard me say that and I sort of ushered them away. And they weren't too happy because these kids, I say they're kids, they were like 19, 20 and that was all of their money they'd had for New York. They had $400 and they just slammed it down. Yeah, so it was more of I just didn't want to do it.
We're getting a bit off topic, but this idea that the world is scarier than it seems, or you can go to certain places and the world is scary in those places, but that's not everywhere. There are billions of people out there that live in like peaceful areas, even
Absolutely.
if the country they live in is up in turmoil.
In the UK, like the only info we have from America at the moment is all doom and gloom. It's shootings, it's this, it's that, it's the cost of everything. And it's like really like not scary, but it makes you think there's no happy stories anymore. There's no stories about Disneyland or about wonderful things happening.
That's why you need to get out here and feel the energy in the streets. There's something electric and magical about New York where the people are just like everywhere and on top of each other and friendly, but also really mean. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the way you're talking about the world and the news and the way you're perceiving it sounds a lot like you used to talk about it when you were on the verge of depression and feeling like the weight of the world was this like impossible weight you couldn't carry. And so I'm just saying, be careful and take care of yourself. No matter what era you're in, when you turn on the news, it feels like it's the worst it's ever been. And I'm not discounting how bad things are getting or have been, but that's not the only thing you should be consuming, and you have to take care of yourself. And sometimes you just have to shut the phone off, Tony.
But it's true. It's what sells, right? No one's going to listen to news that's like, everything's great, everything's wonderful, there are fairies hanging around, which is why this show's kind of interesting, because it's about nothing, to be fair. We have absolutely no information for you whatsoever, people.
What are you talking about? Before the break, we covered a guy who got a DUI on a Barbie Jeep, a children's toy.
Now, where are people going to take that information and use it, methodically?
You know what? The next time someone's in their garage with a bottle of gin and they're looking at their daughter's Barbie Jeep toy, they might not get on it, and we might actually save someone.
Gotcha. So it's like public service announcements, yeah?
Well, that's what I might say if we have to justify this show being educational to radio regulatory bodies. But the truth is, we're just doing stupid stuff. Tony, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
David, thank you very much for your early warning system. And as soon as you said that, it was like a lightning bolt. But yes, I will take that advice on board and speak to you tomorrow.
I'm not saying don't look at the news. I'm not saying what's happening on the news isn't awful. In some cases, I'm just saying take care of yourself. And there's more to what you're seeing on the news in the world right now. And you're going to be great in New York, and don't be scared is I guess what I'm saying.
I'm all good, my friend. I will see you very soon, and I will be wearing my protective camouflage shield.
Coming up next, I'm sure you've been confronted with the possibility of a petty squabble with your significant other. Maybe they forgot to turn off the oven or something. But at that moment, you can choose to argue, egos can get in the way, or you can take a deep breath. So how to deal with moments like that after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Mutine, adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice. An individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules, but behave as if they do not exist. Mutine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always the last show with David Cooper.
It is Therapy Thursdays. On a Wednesday, we are joined by expert in family and marital therapy, a therapist, a social worker, a friend, a handsome man, a bearded individual, and a generally well-dispositioned man, Gary Direnfeld, to discuss all things mental health. It's the only segment in broadcasting intended for a Thursday that airs on a Wednesday that deals with mental health on this radio station. Man, I am rambling. Gary, welcome to the program.
Bearded individual.
Be spectacled, be bearded,
I've been called
nice.
so many things that's never been one of them. But you know what? It works too.
Your beard conveys a certain warmth. I do want to read something for you. This is off your social media page, and it goes as follows. No, dear, I checked. We don't have any bread. Yes, I even checked the freezer. To which your wife responds, I took a look. Here's a loaf. We have 2 more in the freezer. To which you respond, yep, sigh. What's going on with your marriage, Gary?
What's really amazing is how many people on my social media can relate to that. Mm-hmm. I've learned that I have man eyes, and with man eyes, we can only see what we want to see, apparently, especially when it comes to finding food around the house, in the kitchen, in the freezer, whatever. And I am just so amazed at how common an experience this is for couples.
There is something a little deeper here, and it happens to me and my girlfriend Miranda, where I'll say something or she'll say something, and then if the other person double checks, that's a moment for either just breathe, It's not that they don't trust you. They just want to verify for themselves. Or the anger, like, I already said there's no bread in the fridge, and the dysfunction. And then when they find the bread after you said it was not there and they shouldn't look, is it an argument? I think a moment like this is like a critical point for a couple, which is like, I checked, but if you want to check, honey, you go right ahead and I won't be upset. Or I checked, how dare you, question my judgment, and then they check and your judgment's bad, and then it's an argument, and then trust is broken. And like a moment like this in a marriage, Gary, can lead to a petty squabble, and that didn't happen for you and your wife.
No,
I think there's this deeper thing there.
Well, the issue that you're alluding to is in part male ego, quite frankly.
Sure.
We think we know everything, and why would we be questioned, right, as a male? And we have some fragility around that, or at least most males have some fragility around that. So if I've said I've looked and it isn't there, it isn't there.
Exactly.
And then when we're not even believed, how dare you? And you know what? Then our spouse finds it, and we've got to eat crow. So don't think that I haven't lived through that, by the way.
No, we've all done it. And in fact, my girlfriend Miranda does it too. Like, you're saying male ego, but sometimes it's just ego. But we strive to be like, I checked the freezer, but I'm sometimes absent-minded. I checked it to my satisfaction. You, honey, go ahead and recheck the freezer. I'm sure you'll actually find the bread. Like, that's what I should be saying, and that's what I usually do say.
So listen, neither Arlene or I will rub this in the other person's face. So she just quietly walked away, went and checked, and came back with the bread, looked at me, and put it on the counter. And then, quietly added, there's a couple more in the freezer.
Now, this could be a moment of, a cute joke for a couple. Like, yes, I'm absent-minded. I'm an idiot. I get it. That's usually how it plays out with me and Miranda. But
yes.
I think her default is to like argue, and that's what we observed growing up. That's if my dad was in this scenario, not that he would ever get a loaf of bread out of the freezer. He'd say, you go get it. But that's besides the point. That would be an argument. And so that's what I saw growing up. But I know better, right? I know to take that deep breath and think, what do I stand to lose here if I let her go double check? I actually stand to gain something, which is bread, which I'm hungry and I want it,
Yeah. Ego. And look, over the years, I've, as a male, I've learned to tame my ego. Now, am I perfect at it? Oh, David, no. Ask my wife. She'll tell you, what are you talking about? Of course you're not perfect. But having said that, it's a work in progress, and it's something that I do attend to. I posted it on social media. When I do post, I'm always trying to be helpful, even if it's through humor. So I'm showing my fallibility, but I'm also showing my response to my fallibility, which is it's okay. It's okay to be fallible. You make mistakes, you screw up. The world didn't end on that. Just take it humbly.
How, when your ego is threatened like that, if you're the kind of person that wants to like get angry or lash out at people, how do we best control our impulses? Like, if I'm the kind of person where if I said, I already checked the freezer, how dare you question me? How dare you go double check and verify my work, thereby saying that I'm not trustworthy or that I don't know how to check a freezer, which clearly you don't, Gary, no offense. If that's the impulse,
there's the proof.
how do we avoid engaging with our worst selves in these moments?
That's such a good question, David. We all think we are insightful. No one ever puts up their hand and says, I am not insightful. But the truth of the matter is, we're not insightful. Myself, after all my training and what, I'm not insightful. Come on. And anyone that tells me they're insightful, I already know that they're not.
It's the same thing with geniuses. How do you know someone's a genius? They tell you? No, it's their actions that show it. That's how you know someone's insightful, based on their actions.
Exactly. So, how we manage this, first you have to determine, is this something I've ever done? Is this something that I do? Is this a problem? So we call that self-reflection. And David, Not everyone even has the capacity to self-reflect accurately. Some people, they look in the mirror and what they see reflected is always beautiful, as if their you-know-what never stinks. And so to have that critical self-reflection where you say, oh, maybe I'm coming across harshly. Maybe I'm being too self-protective of my ego. Maybe I have to take a deep breath. So how do we start? We start by accepting we may not be the most insightful, and that in and of itself is something we have to come to terms with and work on. We talk about meditation and mindfulness when we find ourselves being irked. Meditation is the practice of catching our mind and our emotions slipping away or wandering. We practice that in a controlled way through meditation. Mindfulness is when we take that practice and we put it into use in the real world. So as you and I are talking, David, I'm always conscious now of where my shoulders are relative to my ears. When they're rising, I recognize something's bugging me. Mm-hmm. And I may talk to you, David, from that place of being bugged. So, we're on a video call to tape this show. And as we're recording, as we're taping, I'm watching my shoulders. And if they creep up, I physically push them back down. And when we recognize these changes in our body, and then we actively countermand those by taking the deep breath, by lowering our shoulders, by relaxing our butt cheeks, then our behavior follows. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you said, how do we do these things? There are legitimate, in a sense, mechanical processes that we can follow.
And back to the argument about the bread in the freezer. My girlfriend and I used to argue about the cat chores, the kitty litter who takes out the litter. And I want to share something that my shrink always says whenever I convey these arguments to him. We actually have a great solution for cat chores now. We haven't fought about it in years. But when we used to fight, my shrink would say, it's never about the kitty litter. It's never about the bread in the freezer. There's always a deeper thing there, your triggers, why you have them, etc. We're here with Gary Direnfeld. When we come back, we're going to change the topic to parenting. When being too nice of a parent goes bad. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We'll continue this chat in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
If you thought goldenly breaded McDonald's chicken couldn't get more golden, think Golder, because new sweet and smoky special edition gold sauce is here. Made for your chicken favorites at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
Smart, sharp, and slightly unhinged. Late night's fresh perspective. The last show with David Cooper.
It is Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We are joined by expert in family and marital therapy, social worker, therapist Gary Direnfeld to talk about when kids throw a tantrum and the parents just take it and are nice and say things like, what video game would you like me to buy? Or what would you like me to individually prepare you for dinner? Being a parent that is too nice can sometimes go bad. And that's what we're going to chat about. Gary, welcome in.
So many parents, I don't know, maybe they do, but their children walk all over them. Their children can be rude, disrespectful. Their children can be demanding. There was a movement in parenting, goes back at least a dozen, maybe 15 years ago, called gentle parenting. And as soon as I mention this, I know we're going to get some emails and letters and whatnot saying, how dare you dismiss gentle parenting?
There are people that parent in this style and they get lucky and they get nice and well-adjuted kids, but not every parent is lucky. And so if your kid's a little sociopath, sorry, I'm using labels I shouldn't. If your kid misbehaves a lot, certain techniques are not going to work, but then for the parents it did work for, they swear by it and they just got lucky.
Honest to God. So sometimes we have to be so clear and unequivocal. No, that's not acceptable. Right there in the moment. No, you're not going to have another X, Y, and Z. Yes, you have to brush your teeth. And I say to these parents, imagine this child at school and they think that they can get away with this stuff. That's a kid who's going to get into trouble real fast. Now, I am never, like the opposite of gentle parenting isn't abusive parenting, but it is being authoritative. It is being clear. So if a child mouths off at you, and you don't need to berate them, you can just, quite frankly, give them a look that says, what? You're talking to me that way? Like, it can be subtle. It doesn't have to be over the top, but there has to be that clear message that this just doesn't fly here. When there isn't that clear message, we see kids escalating. When there isn't that clear message, we see the same conversation between parent and child addressing the same behavior over and over again. I when I sit with those parents, I say, does your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old truly not understand this? Because if they truly don't understand this, then we've got a bigger issue. Your child may have a cognitive problem, but I'm willing to bet your child doesn't act this way and understands these concepts in every other environment. Then it's not the child, it's the parent.
What about to parents who have employed this gentle parenting technique where they don't really discipline the kid? Everything's fine. If the kid throws a tantrum or acts really badly, they don't really address it, or they say, how does that make you feel? And they don't set boundaries. How do you course correct out of that? Because you must, in your practice, treating people, treating families as a social worker, as a therapist, seeing families kind of doing it wrong. How do you course correct out of that?
Seen that many times. And, I ask the parent, what are your goals for your child? How do you want them to respond when they're a grown-up themselves? How do you want them to get along with a partner should they choose to have a partner? Do you think this behavior will work for a relationship with a partner? If your child grows up thinking that their doesn't smell, or there are no consequences for this behavior, or they're entitled to everything that they want. Because the truth is, we have a name for that adult. Those are the ones we call narcissists.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you try and have a longer term perspective on the trajectory of the behavior that you're seeing. And what if this continues into adulthood? How do you know that it's not if you're not addressing it now?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's why we have you on the show.
So, in the first segment, we talked about the capacity to self-reflect. And this is where we want to help that parent to actually self-reflect and think over the long term. Many of them, quite frankly, are seeking to avoid the power struggle in the short term. They may have themselves grown up in a controlling and or abusive family, and they're overcompensating. So
Yes.
It's about righting the parenting pendulum. That's what I call it. We don't want it too much to that permissive, gentle side. We don't want it over to the authoritarian, abusive side. We want that pendulum to hang true.
There's such a deep thing you just touched upon there, which is you grow up in an environment with certain problems. You then have your own family and you think, gee, I really don't want these problems. And so you swing way too far in the other direction. Like maybe the household you grew in had way too much discipline. And so you're way too permissive. Or maybe for whatever reason, like in the 70s or 80s, you grew up in a hippie household with no discipline.
Yeah, it was too free loose.
And then you get too strict and authoritarian. You have to have balance, and also this idea of self-reflecting on your parenting technique. I do feel like the same kind of deeper things come up in our conversations every week, no matter the topic. I mean, before the break, we were talking about squabbles with one's spouse or partner, and now we're talking about kids, but the lessons of being self-reflective of your own behavior are there just the same.
And here's the rub. And again, our ego gets in the way. We think we are so self-reflective. We think we are so insightful. And truly, we are not. So often, it takes a third party looking in to provide us that feedback, to be our mirror. It could be a grandparent, it could be a neighbor, it could be a teacher, it could be a therapist.
There's a reason shrinks have shrinks. There's a reason therapists go to therapy. It's very hard when you're in it to be self-reflective,
Exactly. And so we have to accept that being human, we don't always have that capacity. We want to look to a third party. And to, again, it's so difficult to look to that third party. We have to have our ego in check. We have to say it. And look, here's the clue to the parent that there could be a child behavior and or parenting problem. If you are seeing the same behavior day in and day out, if you're having the same discussion or argument day in or day out, there is an issue to be addressed. It's either with the child, it's likely with the parent.
Got it. Well, what happens if you don't, set boundaries with your kid who is acting out and you just let everything happen?
These are the kids that when they come to your house, you don't want your own children playing with them. Like, think about that. These are the kids for whom it's hard to find play dates because the other parents don't want to deal with the attitude, the pushback, and the rude behavior of your children. So we're not doing our kids, a favor when we don't have what I call limits, boundaries, and expectations. We always want to have those limits, boundaries, and expectations. It's not about enforcing them from a malicious place, but there's nothing wrong with using that word, enforcing the limits, boundaries, and expectations. It can be a look. It can be a loss of a privilege at times. It can be a discussion. Some kids perform really well with just the feedback, but that's why every child is different, and we have to attune our parenting to what we learn about that child's disposition. No one strategy is for all children.
Gary Direnfeld is an expert in family and marital therapy. He joins us for Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, every Wednesday, even though it's intended for Thursdays. Gary, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Coming up next, robots helping kids struggling to read and easing their anxiety along the way. After the break, we'll see how machines are becoming unlikely reading buddies. And if that's the future of education, where does that leave teachers?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
The show that makes you laugh, think, and occasionally uncomfortable. The Last Show with David Cooper.
For many children, learning to read can be a struggle. It can cause them anxiety, and if things go poorly with that, it can lead to difficulty in reading later in life. But what if robots could help kids get over their reading anxiety? Well, a new study suggests that may be possible. I'm here with someone who worked on that. Her name is Lauren Wright. She's a human-robot interaction researcher at the University of Chicago. Lauren, welcome to the program.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Robots and kids sounds like either the plot of a dystopian movie or a way to really help them with their education. I imagine in your research, it's mostly the second one.
Yeah, not really trying to do anything too dystopian. More just trying to find the places in education where a robot can be used to benefit children and educators.
So let's talk about how reading can go wrong for kids at a very young age. Kids can be scared. They can be scared of learning, scared of getting things wrong. Simple reading anxiety can occur with young kids, and then it can grow into a really bad problem. Walk me through what reading anxiety looks like, at least as you've studied it.
Yeah, so what we found kind of researching the background of this project is that when kids are trying to practice their reading fluency, performance anxiety manifests itself as kind of all of their resources in their brain going towards avoiding sounding bad. So that anxiety is preventing them from actually comprehending what they're reading. So they'll stand up in front of the class, they'll read whatever, paragraph that their teacher has told them to, they'll sit back down and they won't remember a thing that they just read. And I bet if you asked a bunch of adults, they would remember having exactly that happen to them at school. But the problem is that when we're talking about literacy development, reading fluency and reading comprehension need to level kind of at the same speed. And what happens is if this anxiety is bad enough that it's actually really impacting their fluency development, the age range that I was looking at, 8 to 11, if they fall behind in that age range, they are extremely likely to be behind in literacy as an adult. So we've got a limited amount of time to kind of do this intervention.
And I imagine in many cases, I assume not all cases, but in many cases, if you intervene well at that moment, it can correct the problem and not cause reading issues later in life.
Yeah, so that's really the idea behind this is not to say that, if a kid's experiencing performance anxiety, just stick them with the robot forever and great, we've solved it. But this is more kind of a creative approach to maybe catch them up to the rest of the class such that they can now kind of keep pace with everybody else.
So walk me through what this human-robot interaction, I love that as a title for the research you do, by the way. Walk me through what it can look like for a kid just starting to struggle at that age.
Yeah, so the way that I would imagine this kind of actually deployed, fictional 10 years in the future, and also we've decided to actually fund education, is...
A conversation for another radio program in another day, but yes.
If a teacher identifies that a kid is really struggling from this anxiety, they see that it's kind of holding them back. It's very common in elementary schools now to send kids off either for pullouts with an individual instructor, which, there may not be a lot of those available at the school, or to give kids kind of individual activities that are separate from the rest of the class that's just a little bit more focused on them. For the skills that kind of require a social partner, like reading out loud, like, more conversational based lessons, a robot is a really interesting opportunity to let teachers kind of provide individualized education without requiring them to be in two places at once.
And these individual sessions with the robot, what would it look like? Just the same as it would with a person, but just maybe easier to resource or less costly?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we ran it in the study, the interaction was exactly the same. So kids read with both the robot and the human, and we kind of monitored them for physiological signs of anxiety. So really objective indicators, kind of hard to change your own heart rate. And it was exactly the same. They had a little tablet app. They'd read a page. At the end of the page, either the robot or the human would give them a few words to repeat, and then they'd kind of go through the couple stories that we had prepared for them. As robots are getting better and better with LLMs, they're a little bit more social. It's really easy to make something that's very close to a human interaction, but maybe doesn't carry the same social weight and fear of judgment.
And what are kids reporting when they're in this kind of mock environment?
It's really easy to impress like 3rd to 5th graders, so they love the robot. They're always very excited to read with the robot. But in interviews with them afterwards, some of them had shockingly accurate reads on the situation, because I would always ask them, what did you think? Did you have a preference? What did you like? What did you not like? And some of them broke it down very easily where they're like, if I'm reading, I'm paraphrasing an actual quote from an actual child, which is, when I'm reading alone, I don't know if I've done anything wrong. When I'm reading with a human, I'm scared that I'm doing something wrong. But when I'm reading with the robot, it doesn't matter. The robot will just correct me, and I don't think it's going to judge me.
Interesting. So it's like the perfect model for kids kind of developing their skills without that anxiety.
Yeah, I view it as kind of removing a roadblock that allows them to focus on the skill without any of our more mental health related, anxiety related, those don't need to be in the way. And we can work on those skills and those issues with anxiety. Like that can be worked on later, but you have a limited amount of time to make sure they're catching up with this literacy development.
I was an anxious kid, scared to raise my hand. I'm an anxious adult, but I was an anxious kid too. That was phrased like a Mitch Hedberg joke. I would have loved something like this when I was a kid, just to like practice that act of like doing things in a classroom that would have caused judgment. Is that how kids feel? Like it really just warms them up for that in-class reading setting?
Yeah, our experiment was kind of short, so I'm not sure that we noticed any like specifically like if they read to the robot first. We had it kind of counterbalanced. So some of them read with the human first, some of them read with the robot first. There wasn't exactly any observable carryover effect. But my theory is that part of the performance anxiety that some of these kids feel is just because they notice that maybe they're not as good. So give them the chance to practice reading out loud. They start to notice that they're getting better. Some of that anxiety might just kind of naturally reduce.
Kids are highly tech literate these days. I'm an elder millennial. I watch young kids with screens and I'm amazed. Anything in your observations with kids and robots or kids and robot educators, I suppose? Did it surprise you at all the way kids respond to things like this?
You know, what surprised me a little bit was how few preconceptions of what a robot is they were going into this interaction with. When you show this robot to adults, they're kind of expecting it to be clunky and not very good at socializing. They're expecting, I think everybody's had issues with voice assistants like Siri, messing up what you're saying. Adults are going in with this prior experience, and so they're expecting that. Kids are going in without a fully formed idea of what a robot even is. So I would get tons of crazy questions. Like the robot that we used is named Misty. That's just the developers named it Misty. So I'd get questions: is Misty a boy or a girl? Does Misty have siblings? Does Misty like hugs? Does Misty read books? All these things that I wasn't really expecting. And so it's kind of this interesting. They have all these questions that make it seem like they're treating the robot like another person, and yet it's not having the same effect as another person.
There may be people listening about your experiment with robots teaching kids to read and be critical of it, thinking that we don't want robots replacing teachers in the classroom in the future. To those critics, what would you say?
Yeah, that's the number one thing that people say is, oh, okay, you're trying to replace all the teachers. Absolutely not. I think that's a terrible idea. We need teachers. We need human teachers. They're the ones who are going to be actually interfacing with an entire class of students. But I view this robot as just a way to augment the teacher and their ability to individualize education. In talking to teachers, oftentimes they say, yes, I'd love to give one-on-one attention. I know which kids would benefit, but can't do it. I can only be in one place. That's where a robot fits in very nicely.
Lauren, thanks for sharing a little info about your research. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Lauren Wright is a human-robot interaction researcher at the University of Chicago. Up next, in a classroom setting, identical lectures, different reactions. Just because a professor's a man or a woman. Even people who don't think they have this bias seem to. Details of a study showing this in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
So good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Vince, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock exclusive discounts on your favorite brands. Shop new arrivals first and more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with a Nordstrom credit card. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
New York, Berlin, London, Paris, kick so slick and fret so lavish, never roll fake, hard to break like a habit, but if it's at stake, then girl, I gotta have it.
Where David Cooper applies NASA-level precision to decoding mixed signals from both space and significant others. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
When asked to judge their professors, students might think they do it based on teaching skills alone, but new research suggests that gender can change everything, even when the lecture is identical. Joining me is someone whose work reveals the subtle ways bias shapes academia. Maybe all of us. Her name is Pia Campeggiani. She's a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Bologna. Pia, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Your study used identical lectures, but just changed the apparent gender of the professor. Walk me through what you were researching with this study.
Yeah, so our study looked at a very simple question. We asked ourselves, do students judge professors differently, depending on whether they think the professor is a man or a woman, even when the teaching itself is exactly the same? So we ran 2 experiments with philosophy students and recent graduates in philosophy, and the idea was to keep the teaching identical, of course, and only change the apparent gender of the professor. We designed 2 studies. In the first study, we had 95 participants who read 4 short lecture excerpts on philosophical topics ranging from Aristotle to Bourdieu. And each of these excerpts was randomly assigned to either a male or a female name. After reading, the participants evaluated the lecturer on qualities like clarity, competence, confidence, care, and overall engagement. In the second study, we had 92 participants. We used the very same lecture excerpts as in study 1, but this time these texts were read aloud by voice actors with typically male or female voices. And again, students rated the professors on the same dimensions. So this design basically allowed us to isolate the role of gender. If the ratings changed, as they did, even though the content was identical, the difference had to come from the participants' perception of gender.
So what did these participants perceive? And were there differences between the groups of participants, maybe demographics, maybe race, gender, things like this?
So the participants were relatively homogeneous. We only asked for their gender identification, so whether they identified as men or women, and we wanted them to be Italian native speakers because the lectures were delivered to them in Italian. More or less, the age cohort was the same, say from 18 to 30 years old, because they had to be currently enrolled at university.
Got it.
And yes, there were difference based on the participants' gender as well. So in the first study, men students consistently gave higher ratings to lectures when they thought that the professor was a man, especially for competence, clarity, and confidence, the perceived confidence of the instructor. And they only rated women higher on care, which of course fits with the stereotype of women being caregiving and more nurturing.
It regrettably does. That really does fit into the stereotype that I wish we didn't have, but please keep going.
Yeah, no, that's what we expected, actually. What we did not expect was the behavior of women participants in the first study. So they were more even-handed in their ratings of individual lectures and professors. But when asked whether they would want to take a full course with that professor, they showed a very clear preference for men.
Interesting. How do you make sense of something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. We have come up with 2 different hypotheses. The first one is that women participants could control their gender biases better when the questions related to objective features of the lecture itself. And when asked about their own personal attitude toward the professors, they fell prey to the gender bias. But another possibility, which I think is more interesting to consider, is that because gender wasn't so salient in the first study, I mean, it was only manipulated by the name we attributed to the lecturer, so a male or female name, maybe women participants didn't perceive gender so much, so they imagined women professors as more masculine-like as displaying more male-coded traits. Therefore, they evaluated them just as competent as men. But then there was a backlash when it came to liking the woman professor herself. And so when asked, would you like to take a full course with this professor? Well, they said no if the professor was a woman. I think this is the most likely explanation. But then we designed study 2 in order to explore the phenomenon further and in order to try to make sense of this difference between men and women participants. And in the second study, where gender was more salient because the texts were read aloud by male or female voices, the bias was much stronger, and it manifested in men and women participants in the same way. So both rated men professors more highly across every category, except, of course, care, where women professors got a higher score.
Let's talk about this care thing and the stereotype that a lot of people hold. What does this say, or what does your study say about the stereotypes we carry without even realizing it? Like, did the students have any idea that they had these stereotypes?
No, they did not. So in the second study, the participants were also asked to fill in a social role questionnaire because we wanted to investigate whether their explicit attitudes towards gender role correlated with their biases in the evaluation. And they do not. So even students who have very egalitarian and progressive explicit attitudes and beliefs, they were still victim of the gender biases when they evaluated the lecturers and the professors. So, I mean, yeah, none of us is immune. We really have to pay a lot of attention and to be very self-conscious that these are mind bugs that we have, and we have to fight them.
And in some cases, we can think we have them, we can try to work against them, and still they're there without us knowing it.
Yeah, of course. So, of course, I mean, we can't do it all by ourselves. We need procedures safeguarding us from falling prey of these biases. So we need rules, we need anonymity where it is possible, and so on, in order to make sure that we don't buy into these stereotypes, because we do. I mean, even I do. So I've recently changed my way of assessing students from oral examinations to written examinations, so I can do it anonymously, because I saw that a lot of variables that didn't have anything to do with how well the students were prepared would matter. Whether I liked them or not, whether they were beautiful or not, whether they were men or women, whether they were old or young. Even if you fight it, it's very, you can free yourself up to a point, but you will never be free enough, I'm afraid.
Are there moments when you do research like this where you personally stop and think, wow, this bias is stronger than I imagined? Like, I knew people had stereotypes, but it's worse than I thought.
Yeah, that's what we thought, because the difference in the ratings was really significant. So I expected for the results to be what they were actually, but not so bad, and not in such a young cohort of participants. So this doesn't fill me with hope. I hope that one of the results of this study will be a little bit more attention from the institutions themselves.
Beyond academia, does your study teach us anything about the everyday way that sexism can play out, say in workplaces, casual conversations?
Well, it doesn't tell us much about what happens elsewhere. It matches with what we already know about what happens outside academia. And what we know about academia, this study was specific on philosophy students. So we know that philosophy is white and male-dominated. Not only in Italy, this is worldwide. And, this phenomenon of students' ratings might play a role in the underrepresentation of women, because teaching evaluations are used for career progression and measuring teaching effectiveness, whereas they actually measure gender much more than teaching quality.
Well, thanks so much for this discussion. I regret some of these results or what they are, but it is really interesting to talk about. I appreciate you sharing this stuff with us. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, David.
Pia Campeggiani is a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Bologna. Coming up, if you're polishing your resume, you might think honesty is always the best policy, but new research suggests that ain't always true. So an employer doesn't think less of you. What should you reveal on your resume, and what might be better left unsaid? We'll reveal those surprising findings after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 45% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
Keep listening to The Last Show with David Cooper, because the alien invasion can wait. The Last Show with David Cooper.
When putting together your resume, the advice might be honest, don't lie, don't embellish. But what about those sneaky little omissions or over-exaggerations? Do they get you ahead? That is what we'll discuss with someone here who studied this. His name is Tom Lane, and he's an economist at Newcastle University in the UK. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on.
I love that you chose to study honesty in resumes. Walk me through what you were looking into here and what you hope to learn.
So we're looking to see here whether if someone has a particular kind of weakness that they can choose to include on their resume or just simply not mention it, which kind of approach does better. And perhaps not surprisingly, it turns out that if you have got a weakness, then it's best not to mention it. So what we looked at in particular was people's university grades, and whether if you've got low grades, whether it's better to honestly write them out on your resume, or whether it's better just to say I graduated from University X and leave it at that.
Yeah, obviously it's the second one, right? Like, I've actually been in the position of hiring in my former career. I must have done 200-300 candidate interviews where I worked at the company, and new graduates would list low GPAs on their resumes. And I'm thinking, why are you doing this?
Right. So one of the things that we looked at is whether people actually do this. And so we looked at, we went on Monster, which is one of the big recruitment websites, and you can scrape it for people's CVs, and we were looking at whether people actually do reveal low grades or not. And some people do, but there were plenty of people that don't.
Okay, so when you actually looked at students who disclosed their grades, what did you find? How are those resumes received? Is the obvious advice that I'm screaming into my microphone correct?
Yeah. So we did this in the UK, and UK academic credentials are a bit different. We don't have a concept of GPA, but students just get a degree that comes in one of 4 categories. So the best thing you can get is a first, and the second best thing you can get is an upper second class degree, and then you have lower second class degrees and third class degrees.
Leave it to the British to have 4 rankings, but the 2 middle rankings are the second place.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's one of these ridiculous arcane aspects of the British system. And so things below an upper second are regarded as kind of not very impressive. And we have pejorative names that we give to them, like a 2-2 was known as a drinker's degree, and a third class degree was known as a gentleman's degree, in the sort of the idea that all of the prime ministers get a third class, but people that go into serious jobs get a 2-1 or a first.
Okay, so those who ended up with the lower degrees, I guess mapping to North American, vernacular, a lower GPA,
yeah,
and they disclosed it. What did you find that people hiring or people perceiving these resumes decided about these candidates?
Yeah, so if they disclosed it, then they basically did the worst out of all of the categories. So it turned out that employers do pay attention to people's degrees. So the people who had the highest grades basically got offered about 30% more interviews than otherwise similar applicants that had a third class degree. The ones who just said nothing ended up kind of in the middle of the pack. So they were doing just about as well as the ones who revealed that they got a 2-1 or an upper second or a lower second.
Interesting. Now, so I guess the general advice is if you have something a little shady on your resume, like don't put it on there or massage it in such a way that it looks a little bit better for you. But this advice is basically saying honesty is not the best policy when it comes to your resume.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you should actually lie on your CV.
No.
So the kind of the take home message here is if there's something not very impressive, you're not under any obligation to reveal it. And in fact, this is something that if you did get maybe not very good grades at university, this is a kind of a strategy that could somewhat mitigate that. But the idea that you should say that you got a really high GPA when you got a low one is, not a good strategy because they can actually check.
Yes, that did happen to me once. Where
and it happened to me as well. So after I graduated, the first thing I did was go off to Australia, and I had different kind of resumes that I was using to apply for different kind of jobs. And then it turned out that the same agency ended up with two of my different resumes with different lies on it. And so
you must have learned a hard lesson with that one.
Well, yeah.
I graduated from a university that just hands out honors degrees. They just put it as part of the degree. Yeah. And honors sometimes means a distinction where you got really good grades or you got good grades and did a special undergraduate thesis. So I put that I had an honors degree on my resume, and I did. But I got low grades, and the first job I got in the U.S., I had to send over my grades after I got hired to get an immigration visa. And my boss was just like, you kind of made it seem like you got good grades and you didn't. He just kind of shook his head, but he didn't care. They still hired me. But you got to be careful with your omissions because you might get caught, right?
Right, yeah. So omissions, that's okay, but yeah. Outright lies, probably not such a good idea, especially if your visa depends on it.
Are there students out there who put that they got low grades on their resume? And if so, why are they doing it?
So I don't know why they're doing it, but there's all sorts of conflicting advice that students get on how they should construct a resume. So actually, while I was doing this research, I actually Googled, should I reveal bad grades on my resume? And you get, you do come across advice from sort of careers counselors saying, you should always be honest. You should, don't conceal anything. This will only, come back to bite you later on in the process.
But is an omission dishonesty when it comes to a resume? I know omissions can be dishonesty. For example, I once told my girlfriend that I didn't watch a show without her when I watched it with her next to me sleeping, because I technically did watch it with her. She was just sleeping. She was very upset at this. So omissions can sometimes be dishonesty, but in a resume, leaving things off like grades, I don't think that's dishonest.
Yeah, well, if you think there's kind of infinite number of things that you might write on your resume and only a finite amount of space, so it doesn't seem like you should necessarily be expected to include everything. But one of the reasons why an omission might not work very successfully, if it is something that the employer really would expect to see, and it might look a bit suspicious if you haven't included it. And this was the reason for addressing the question in the first place, that it's not completely obvious that omitting weak information is going to be a good strategy.
Interesting. And sometimes I would see a bunch of, especially fresh graduates. I was hiring in the computer science field. I'd know if they left their GPA off their resume that they didn't get good grades. But I'm like, okay, you use good judgment. You're not disclosing this. If I ask you, you'll have to tell me. But it seems like bad judgment to me to leave bad items, like line items on your resume. And that would bias me more than the lower grades themselves, maybe because I had bad grades. I don't know.
Right. But it might also signal that the person is quite honest, which could be a good characteristic in someone that you employed, depending on what line of work you're in. Maybe not.
There's this whole thing like we want to hire people similar to us. I had someone who, I was someone who didn't have good grades. I got hired. I didn't disclose the grades. I want to see people like me. We tend to bias like that. General advice for people entering the workforce out of university, what should they be putting on their resume?
Oh, God, you put me on the spot here. I've got no idea.
Come on, you've studied this stuff.
I've never had a proper job in my life.
You've only worked in academia?
Yeah. It does look like grades are very important.
If you got good ones.
If you've got good ones, then you should definitely mention them. I guess a good work experience at university. I'm just reading what I wrote in the research to try and remember what I've said that other people have discovered are good things to put on your resume.
You're like me. People are like, oh, you discussed this last week on the show. I'm like, oh my God, I got to check my notes. I have no idea.
Yeah.
No, I get it. This has been a fun chat regardless. I think there's a lot of subtlety around what is dishonest when it comes to omissions on resumes. And if you got low grades, I think the takeaway is maybe don't disclose it, but also don't lie.
Right.
Thanks so much for coming on and chatting. This has been a fun, free-form chat about resumes and grades and stuff. I appreciate you coming on the show, Tom.
All right. All the best.
Tom Lane is an economist at Newcastle University in the United Kingdom. Up next, the science-backed case for you doing nothing. That's right, Mom. Our brains need boredom to be productive. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Attention all small biz owners. At the UPS Store, you can count on us to handle your packages with care. With our certified packing experts, your packages are properly packed and protected. And with our pack and ship guarantee, when we pack it and ship it, we guarantee it. Because your items arrive safe or you'll be reimbursed. Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable. Come into your local store today.
When the day is done, we're just getting started. The last show with David Cooper.
Do nothing, do more. It sounds like a contradiction, but letting your mind wander might be the most productive thing you can do today. We are going to discuss why the brain might need boredom. Stick around, just don't do anything. I'm here with someone who's written on this. She's a senior lecturer and population health researcher at the University of Lancashire. Her name is Dr. Anna Kenyon. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with a little jargon. I mean, it's simple, right? What is attention restoration theory? And what does it mean when you say to people, do nothing?
So attention restoration theory is the idea that we get something called attentional fatigue when we concentrate too much, when we're constantly trying to force our brains to focus and do something. And what we need to do is just take a step back and literally just let our minds wander. And you could say just do nothing. And this actually enables us to recover from this kind of mini brain burnout that we get.
What are the time scales here? Like if I'm super focused on a task for 10 hours, can I take a 1-minute break? If I'm focused for 20 minutes, do I take a 5-minute break? Like it seems like such a vague kind of direction, or does it really not matter?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. Perhaps you should be a population health researcher too. And actually, we don't have an answer to that. But some research suggests that as little as 10 minutes of kind of timing out can restore our ability to focus again.
My girlfriend has this trick where she just lays on the floor, on the carpet with her head facing the ceiling for 10 minutes. And I always look at her like she's nuts, but she does it when she has a stressful day. Maybe I should try something like that.
That's perfect. That's definitely something that I do and some people I know do. But I think it's a really important thing to do if you feel like you need that time out.
So how does our mind or our brain or just us benefit from moments of this undirected attention? Like what's going on with our heads when we just stare off into the abyss and relax for 10 minutes after a busy day of attention?
Well, the word that I used in my in the article that I wrote was wandering, and I really love the word wandering, and I love the action wandering. It lets us just reflect, I guess, is the more formal term. So this theory made a distinction between the idea of directed attention and undirected attention, which they call fascination. So directed attention is what we kind of make our brains do. And it's what we actually need to do most of the time. But sometimes we do it even when we don't need to. And when we sort of stop making our brains focus on something, which you can sort of understand as maybe kind of going against the grain of what you might naturally do, our minds start to wander, and we start to relax, and we start to reflect. And this, according to restoration theory, kind of enables us to restore our kind of mental facility for things like planning, decision making, and our ability to focus. So basically, our ability to focus on something is finite if we're kind of forcing ourselves to focus, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's about this distinction between directed attention and fascination, where we're just not forcing ourselves to focus on anything, just seeing what our minds do.
Is the where or the what we are putting blank attention towards important? For example, if I did this out, I don't know, in a park next to a tree versus like on the sidewalk on the concrete on a hot day, or in my office here, which is a cramped little room, is the setting important? And then within the setting, what I stare at or what I do nothing at, if that even makes sense, do those factors come in?
But according to attention restoration theory, there are kind of 4 key aspects to this sort of downtime, this mental downtime. So one is that it has this soft fascination where it's kind of interesting to us. So that can be, say, people watching, or what the original theory suggested was that nature is quite innately fascinating to us. So staring at animals, birds hopping around outside. There's other aspects to it, which is to try not to kind of sound too academic-y. The other 3 aspects of restoration are extent. So we need to feel kind of fully immersed. It needs to kind of be big. And that doesn't mean physically big. It means we can just sort of get lost in it. And that can be, I don't know if you ever looked at, sometimes I just look at a single stalk on a plant and there's a whole little world in there. There's ladybirds, and there's the aphids that they're eating, and then there's the ants getting involved, and there's a lot going on, and there's bees coming. There's a whole little mini world.
Like a snowflake or something.
Yeah, absolutely. A snowflake's a perfect example. It also gives us a sense of being away, so something different from what we sort of do most of the time. And then the final sort of aspect of it is compatibility, which has to be compatible with what we want. So we have to kind of want this little time out. We have to want to be in this space. And there has been research done. So often nature is seen as this very, very restorative environment. But you have to want to be there. If you drag people into nature saying, right, we're in nature now, you should be enjoying yourself and you should be appreciating this, actually it has the reverse effect. So that compatibility is really important too.
You're right that we filled our boring moments. Like growing up in the 90s, I felt like I had a lot more before I had a smartphone in our pocket. Like, should we consciously be off our phones during those brief moments during the day where we have time and just stare off into the abyss? I just feel like I'm not going to, some days I don't get any time to myself because the time I do get to myself, I spend it scrolling on my phone.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's actually a book written, Amusing Ourselves to Death, which was written a very long time ago. But yes, we do seem to be now sucked into our phones, and I'm certainly no exception to this. But part of the idea from my research came when you just, on a train in a cafe, you look around, everybody's looking at their phone. Me too. So I'm not sort of saying I've got the key here, but I think that, just allowing ourselves these moments. And actually another angle that comes to me is because I'm profoundly deaf. So when I take my implants out, I can't hear anything. And deaf people sort of say of hearing people, gosh, you're constantly being bombarded with stuff, with noises, and you bombard yourselves as well. So I guess that kind of inspired the work a little bit too.
Yeah, I suppose we're being bombarded by sensory information all the time. Earlier when you were describing being in nature and looking at a leaf and staring at the aphids and all the like intricate things on the leaf, I was thinking about how I'm never on my cell phone on the New York subway system. I just stare at the sights, and there are so many. There are sights, there are smells, there are substances, there are stains. And I know it sounds silly, but I do find riding the trains without my phone, well, I mean, it's in my pocket, but without using my phone, very meditative. And it sort of gets me to my destination refreshed. We really ought to be off our phones. So I guess there's one more question here. Is there a minimum kind of effective dose of undirected attention here? Like, is it 10 minutes or even less?
From what I've read, 10 minutes seems to be the minimum in the research. But I think, honestly, anything is good, even if it's just a minute or less.
If someone's cooped up in an office, they can't get to a park, what do you recommend they do?
Look out the window, get a plant, just anything really, anything that you can just be immersed in even for a second, just to let yourself daydream. Maybe it's a bit of squishing a bit of blue tack, I don't know.
Well, I wish I had spoken to you as a kid, Dr. Anna Kenyon, who's a senior lecturer and population health researcher at the University of Lancashire, because I could have used what you told me to tell my mom, hey, get off my back. I don't need to do my homework. I can do nothing. I kid, of course, but thanks so much for sharing this stuff with me and discussing this article you wrote. I appreciate you coming on the show, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's our Hump Day, our Wednesday night show. Thank you so much for tuning in. The Last Show has a podcast. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com, or search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app. And while you may have heard me say that before, here's something new. Perhaps some bonus content that's podcast only. So definitely subscribe and check it out. All right, that's it. I am David Cooper, and this was The Last Show.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu, is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.